We should never judge the past on today's standards. It's unfair.
You're imposing upon the complexity of human civilization not only the wrong categories, because every society, every civilization is evil in some ways and good in others. And you're also, if I may say so, you are projecting onto the past your own contemporary morality. If you think about racism for a moment, most of human history has been dominated by people who have thought in racial terms, who have divided the world and the peoples that they governed according to their races. It is absolutely ubiquitous. It is absolutely normal. And we, of course, because we now live in anti-racist societies, we are simply projecting onto the past. They would not understand us, Mehdi. It would be completely ahistorical. So I ask the audience to...
Excuse me, sir. Whose history are we talking about? Because the way you use the word us, it needs a spotter. It is doing some serious heavy lifting. During the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, many news pundits told us that tearing down Confederate statues was projecting our morals onto the past. The argument itself has genuine philosophical roots. Many historians talk about presentism and its dangers of us projecting backwards. And honestly, if you look at it, it makes sense. Like, we come from a vantage point where we can look at slavery and colonialism differently than back then. We have institutions and organizations and nonprofits to help fight a lot of inequality. It's kind of wrong to project those our morals today on people back then. Yet nobody says don't judge Rosa Parks by today's standards when talking about, public transit etiquette. That's because the don't project backwards argument is usually used to defend the powerful, never to explain the powerless, which makes me wonder what they're asking here. Like, are you telling me in the 1700s there was no one that knew bad was bad? Like, there was nobody standing around thinking, hey, you know what? Kidnapping human beings and making them work for free is wrong? There was always people who were fighting the dominant ideology of the day. How would most of us know the earth was round if Pythagoras and Aristotle didn't argue with people 24/7 on their version of Facebook? And what about the people who suffered under these ideologies? The colonized, the sexual assault victims, the murdered indigenous people. Don't they have an opinion? They must have had an opinion in real time. Why don't their stories matter? The modern standards argument erases these people's subjectivity. It takes away their moral historical record and just replaces it with only the dominant one. That's why when someone says that you can't project morals onto Jefferson, what they really mean is Jefferson, the grown man, didn't know slavery was wrong and there was no one around to tell him.
Oh, hello, Jefferson. Yes, it's me. I'm just calling to inform you that Susan and I won't be coming to your Freaknik this weekend. Yes, no, of course not. Yes, I'm afraid so. It is the slavery. Frankly, Jefferson, it's become a bit gauche.
That's just retroactive white supremacy. These attitudes show up when we teach history all the time. Which voices get footnotes? What gets called barbarism and what gets called resistance? I was nominated for a Juno a few years ago. It's Canada's Grammys, not to brag. While I'm grateful for the recognition, I also understand what it means to be black in a colonized country. The system excludes me and then retroactively pats me on the back, telling everyone that everything's fine. We know better. But the same conditions still exist materially that created the problem in the first place. It's like the rainbow crosswalk. it gives you distance from the actual causality of the oppression. You're on your own. This is a different world. I had a conversation with a guy who swore after watching an anti-socialist YouTube video that socialism never worked. There's not a country on the planet where socialism has ever worked. And I pointed out, my mother's country of Guyana, which was overthrown by a US-backed coup, and Jakarta, overthrown by a US-backed coup, and David Graeber's work on, historical socialist societies. And he said to me, "Oh, I don't know those places," which I said, "That's because they're not white." He took a beat, took a breath, thought about it, then said, "Well, when I said socialism didn't work, I meant big countries." What does big countries mean? We don't talk politics anymore. It's also why I don't go on Twitter. Twitter is filled with people who have Viking avatars going on about the accomplishments of Western civilization, until you talk about accountability. Until you bring that up. They don't want to hear that. They want nothing to do with that. They had nothing to do with that. That wasn't them. That wasn't their family. You need to stop projecting. Because once you accept that the slave had a moral framework worth listening to, then you have to look at the slave owner as someone who chose to put their moral framework over another and enforce it with violence. Which makes inheriting Western civilization a lot more complicated.
Why do you carry that flag? Because this is my heritage. My family fought to save their farm under this flag. Who was working that farm? My family was. Who was working the farm? They were poor. Do you know how much a slave cost back then?
In Canada right now, we have groups of people trying to undermine colonialism. They talk about how, the residential school system wasn't that bad, and they deny truth and reconciliation. All astroturfed by big oil to get reasonable white Canadians on their side for land. It wasn't that bad, and people didn't know better, or just rewriting historical fact. The cynicism mirrors the very system which they say is something of the past. They cut and paste moments throughout history like a Frankenstein's monster of ideology. A bit of the Beaver Wars that helps their argument over here, and the residential schools not being complete terrorist institutions over there, and voila. All these gymnastics so they can avoid the truth that they're, too cowardly to admit, hey, I'm a fucking racist. Colonialism was and is all about whose frameworks count. The don't judge the past by today's standards is the same move. And if standards can't travel through time, how does the wealth? If guilt can't cross generations, how does the house, the portfolio, the land do it?
So the problem, Lawrence, is that Nigel specifically wrote a book saying he wanted to make a moral assessment of empire. So if you have a problem with the morality side of things, you should take it up with Nigel, not me. That was the goal of the book. In terms of what you said about projecting onto the past, I hear that argument a lot, and I take your point about racism and where cultural attitudes go. But killing lots of people, I'm pretty sure they thought that was wrong in 1850, 1750, 1650. Murdering and massacring women and children, I think they thought that was wrong at the time as well.